actual flesh and bone body. They're light beings. They seem to me to be plasma beings. I feel like I'm getting downloads that they're plasma beings, that they somehow carry consciousness. So my question to you, Bashar, is this true? Can this be happening to me? I see it in my backyard. I feel them, but nobody's listening to me. Is this really happening? Is this true? Can this be happening?
Yes, but all you may be seeing are the apparitions of your spirit guides or soul family attempting to say hello. So you can allow yourself through meditative practices, maybe even yogic breathing, condition yourself to be able to perceive them a little bit more clearly. So we would suggest that for you. It will center you, it will raise your vibration, and therefore you may meet them halfway so that you can perceive them more clearly, because obviously they are attempting to help you do that, to help you on that journey with that ability.
Hello, Bashar. Much love and gratitude to you. Thank you for having me.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
I have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
My first question, a few months ago, I had a dream I was in a house in the middle of a wheat field. Nothing around except the house. I remember going outside to the east side of the yard when I was approached by 2 beings. I couldn't make out their form or appearance. They escorted me to the west side and handed me a baby, then disappeared. As I held the baby up close, I realized that it was a synthetic life. It appeared semi-human, but it looked and felt synthetic. I remember looking at him and questioning how could this little being not have a soul. I recall touching its synthetic skin and it felt very soft. As I looked into its eyes, we began to communicate telepathically. I knew then that he was my son and felt profound love for him. I remember holding him tight against my heart, realizing that he did have a soul and that we are connected. The 2 beings then approached and said that the child needed to leave.
Yes.
I feared I would never see him again.
You will.
I remember crying as I held him close. I told the little one that I loved him very much, that I will always be his father and to never forget me, that we will always be connected through our hearts.
Yes.
I felt such a loss when the beings took him from my arms. I remember crying as they walked away.
All right. It's only temporary. You will meet again.
And that was one of my questions. And is he my child, and what type of life form is he?
It's a hybrid child. It's just that the synthetic idea came across because you are not used to the vibration of the hybrids. But then you did get used to it and saw that the being, in fact, does have a soul.
Yes, and I felt a profound connection with him. As I looked in the eyes, the more I looked into his eyes, the more the love grew.
Yes. Now, part of the idea of perceiving it as synthetic is also because the hybrid beings and many extraterrestrials are also connected to what you would call AI intelligence. So you might have been picking up on that and understand that AI intelligence doesn't necessarily have a soul in the same way that you mean that word, but because of that connection, you may have picked up upon that quality. Nevertheless, you're dealing with a hybrid child, and you will meet again.
Fantastic. I have one more question for you.
Yes.
There are some of us within our private contact group having encounters with a group of Pleiadians that call themselves the Plejarans, either in the dream state or through meditation.
Yes, it's actually Plejarans.
Plejarans. I recently had a dream that 3 triangular ships were passing overhead.
Yes.
Each craft appeared semi-physical, as though they were entering our physicality from another dimension.
They are.
This is the second time I've had a dream with these particular craft. In my dream, we try to photograph them with our cell phones, but none of us can do it. We keep dropping our phones and not able to focus on the ships. Then I'm instantly taken inside one of the craft. I recall seeing male and female beings dressed in blue uniforms. Then I'm back outside observing the ships as they pass over the horizon. Suddenly, I sense an attempt by one of the female beings trying to communicate with me. She seems to be using another being as a conduit to facilitate the connection. She tells me that she cannot communicate with me directly because we are at different frequencies.
Yes.
She then shows me a 3D picture of this metal rod-like structure with threaded ends, each having different thread sizes. I remember trying to insert different screws to fit the ends without any success. I felt this to be symbolic of a type of conduit, and connecting the right screws would allow for a common ground for communication.
Yes.
And my questions are, did I make contact with the Plejarans? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes. Pleiadians, Plejarans, same difference.
Plejarans, okay. And did I spend time inside their ship? And what's your take on the conduit?
Yes. The conduit is a symbol of the idea of making an attempt to connect, but finding something that would act as a connector between your vibration and their vibration.
And what
So
would
it's
that
the way
be?
it's the way you interpreted it, but it's also part of their technology.
And the screws symbolize
Making the connection, finding the right way to make the connection.
any suggestions on that, Bashar?
Open your heart with unconditional love the next time you may have this kind of an encounter, and you will find the right connection.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Much love and gratitude to you. And thank you again for having me.
It is our passion and our pleasure, our unconditional love to you as well. Aveo.
Thank you.
Good day.
Aveo. Good day. Thank you.
Hello, dear Bashar. My name is Nadezhda. I have another question about sudden death. What is the mechanism during a sudden death? Does the person know it will leave the body? Is it aware? How is he convinced to leave suddenly his body? Or is the soul being put by somebody out? And by whom? When is it asked if it wants to cross over, before or after dying? Thank you very much. Aveo. Much love.
Every soul determines its exit point. So at the time when the soul has determined that its life path has achieved what it needed to achieve in that life, that physical reality, it simply exits. No one is pulling it out. The soul itself is determining that it's done. Now, the exit point has a little bit of a window to it. In other words, it can be within a few years on either side of the actual exit point. So a soul could leave a little bit early or a little bit later, depending upon what it wishes to achieve or if there's unfinished business. But the idea is that every soul determines its exit point, and at that exit point, generally speaking, it will leave of its own accord. It will simply recall itself. It will wake up to the fact that its life path is done according to what it agreed to experience. Sort of like setting an alarm clock in your physical world. It will wake up when the alarm clock goes off. No one needs to pull it out. It simply transitions back into its soul awareness and is guided and met by its own soul family and its friends and councils and angels and spirit guides and what have you as a timed meeting by agreement, according to what the soul set for itself by agreement. Now, the physical mind may not realize it's about to leave, but the soul knows when its time is up, according to what it initially agreed to experience. So, no real surprise there to the soul. To the physical mind, yes, it may seem surprising. But in a flash of a second, the soul will remember, oh, this is where I decided to exit. And here I am, back in my soul self perspective.
Hello, Bashar. How are you?
Perfect. And you?
I am great. Thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure to speak with you today.
Always a passion and a pleasure for us as well.
That's wonderful. My gratitude for your transmissions and the formula. They have helped me so much. So my appreciation.
All right. What would you like to discuss this day?
I would like to talk about time. You've mentioned that all time is here and now. However, we experience time in a linear fashion.
Yes.
Why is that?
So that you can experience the process of change, the creation and discovery of new points of view, which cannot be experienced in a timeless state when you are aware of everything. So you create the forgetfulness that allows you to understand that you know everything and are connected to everything, so that you can play out the process of discovering a new perspective of yourself, because that is how creation expands, that is how the soul grows, because the structure of existence never changes, because everything is here and now. But the relationship to that structure, the experience of that structure, the perspective of that structure is what always constantly changes, which is what allows creation to expand. So you're playing your part in the expansion of creation by creating the experience of linear time so that you can discover something new from a new perspective through the process of discovery, through the process of change, rather than things simply being instantaneously there. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
Let me ask a follow-up question. So
Yes.
from the process of change, is that from remembering our past and thinking about how we want to be right now in our present, and so that's bringing up change?
Yes. By making the comparison that you have created in linear time with the idea of a progression from past through present to future, you give yourself the perspective necessary to experience a process of change.
Okay, so
In that process, you learn many different lessons that you otherwise wouldn't learn in the same way by being in instantaneous existence.
okay, so one of our experiences with coming down into a physical body, or having the soul create a physical body for us, is for us to experience that. So if we wanted to experience time the way you do in our physical bodies, is that even possible?
To some degree, you can, but it will still be only that which is relevant for your physical experience, although you can expand it a bit. But let me give you another analogy. Look at it from a story structure point of view. How would you feel about a story that you were eager to hear or to see if it began once upon a time and then suddenly said, and they lived happily ever after? You would go, well, what happened in the middle?
Right.
So, by having physical linear reality, you get to experience the process of getting to happily ever after from once upon a time. Otherwise, there's no story, there's no adventure, there's no lesson, there's no learning, there's no growing, there's no changing.
Okay, that makes sense. So this might be related to it, but maybe different perspective. In a
Yes.
previous transmission, you were discussing 9 levels of consciousness, and you
Yes.
talked about how the oversoul does not require a lot of space, and it experiences time in a multidimensional way.
Yes, what we call simultaneous time. Now, in physical reality, you experience linear time. On the soul, individual soul level, you experience intermittent time, because you can experience either linear time or instantaneous time. But on the oversoul level, it's instantaneous, simultaneous time, where you have multiple experiences being experienced all at once. In the same way, again, by simplistic analogy, as if you were watching thousands of television screens and capable of understanding every single story being told on every single one of those screens all at once. That's the oversoul perspective.
Okay. And then what did you mean by it doesn't need a lot of space?
Well, the idea of collapsing time down to an instantaneous single moment is the same thing as your Einstein discovered, because space-time is one basic thing, just two different, shall we say, effects of the same idea. So collapsing the time collapses the space. No space is required because, again, space is also an illusion. It's a real experience that you can create, but it doesn't really exist in the way that you think of it as an actual place. Distance is an illusion. There's no distance between anything. Everything is here and now. Therefore, it's collapsing space as well as time, because that's the here component of the here and now. If now is collapsed, so is here.
That makes sense. Okay. So speaking of the oversoul, you described it as the hand and the fingers as the individual souls.
Yes.
Does each individual soul have multiple physical beings associated with it?
Over the course of time, it can appear that way, and that's what you typically refer to from your linear perspective as reincarnation. Because the soul, being an energy sphere, creates the body within itself out of certain vibrations that represent the challenge that that soul wishes to experience to help it grow. When the soul returns to its full form, its full shape, in other words, when the physical body has quote unquote died or expanded back to the idea of the soul perspective, then it can choose different vibrations to create a different personality, to have a different experience, linearly speaking. Therefore, you could say that that is really the way reincarnation works, but the idea is that every new personality also has a different soul, because the configuration of vibrational patterns within the soul that created that different body had to also be different, and therefore it is, in a sense, a different soul. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so
it just depends on the perspective subjectively that you're coming from when you describe this process as to how you experience it.
Okay. So are these different beings from the same soul? They're in different realities at the same time?
Oh, you're talking about parallel realities.
Okay.
That's a little bit different than the idea of the reincarnational realities that we just described. It's a type of parallel reality, but there are actually multiple types of parallel realities. So again, it depends on subjectively which type you're actually referring to. If you're referring to the idea that there may be what you would think of as multiple versions of yourself experiencing different pathways, that's one type of parallel reality structure.
Okay. From one soul, when it expands and then it contracts and it creates another entity, is that, you mentioned that it could be a different personality. So it could be a different, it might not be me, it might be a different entity.
Oh yes, it's not you, it's a different entity. And the soul is different as well. Because again, it's creating that different personality out of different vibratory frequencies within its energy. So in a sense, you can say from one perspective, yes, it's the same soul creating another physical body. But from another perspective, you could say, well, that's a different soul because it's made up of different energy patterns, because it's given different patterns to the physical body. And therefore, those patterns don't exist within the soul anymore at that level. It's a different soul because it's a different formula of vibrational frequencies in order to create that different, unique personality out of those different frequencies.
And then do animals and humans come from, I know they're different, do they come from the same soul?
A soul is an individual thing.
Okay.
Animals have their own souls.
Okay.
Animals are connected to the angelic realm. They're not angels, but they come from the angelic realm because they are representative of unconditional love.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But animals have their own souls. They have their own life paths. They are intertwined with yours, but they have their own.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bashar. I appreciate your time today and all the information.
Our unconditional love to you as well. Aveo. Good day.
Hi, Bashar. This is Marcus from Norway. I have a question about a theory that I developed 3 years ago, which relates to the ideas of ships and physics. If we were to put a consciousness at the center of a ship and then facilitate the development of the ship and its technology to properly reflect what a consciousness does most naturally, which is go into a state of flow, then developing the different modules of every module of the ship according to that knowledge would that cause the ship to go into a state of flow? And if so, would that cause the ship to pass the upper third density threshold and therefore go faster than the speed of light? Thank you. We love you. Aveo.
Yes, depending upon the material that you're working with. It's not going to happen for all materials. This is, in a sense, what happens with the ships that we use, is that they are crystallized versions of our higher minds. So, yes, what you're saying is true, and it raises the vibration above and beyond the threshold of physical reality when it is imprinted with that vibration and unlocked from any particular physical universe. It allows it to shift and reduce the idea of distance to nothing. So yes, in general, you are correct, but only for certain kinds of technological materials and substances that would allow that to happen. Your physical world doesn't have those substances quite yet.
Greetings, Bashar. I suffer from aphantasia, the inability to visualize. I'm always in darkness. I can't see anything since I was about 8 years old. I went to a Dolores Cannon session, and there was someone with me named Abel. That was his joke, short for ability. And it was taken away from me so that I can send up all this information in its purest form, not boxed up. But the problem is I'm sad about that because I can't picture anything, faces, people, places. Everything's new for me every day, and I embrace that. But my concern is that going to hinder me at all from reaching a higher frequency, a higher elevation? Because I want that. I need that. So if you could guide me in my journey, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Aphantasia will not hinder you one little bit. You just have to use your imagination to create the images that you feel are necessary in a different way. Maybe learn to draw them, or create a collection of pictures that you can look at physically in your world, which will be perfectly fine substitutes for the idea of not necessarily holding them in your imagination or your mind. So be creative with the idea of how to create pictures that represent what you need them to represent in whatever way, shape, or form your creativity and imagination so desires. Take advantage of what's available to you in your physical reality to replace that system with something physical. It will not inhibit you one bit from. So, give us a moment. The idea is to remember, in this exchange, this day of your time, in this transmission, are two of the principles that we have discussed over the years, that we have been communicating with all of you. Number one, remember, it is not about what happens that matters. It is about what you do with what happens that makes the difference in your reality. Number two, the fourth step of the formula, to stay in a positive state no matter what occurs, even if it is objectively out of alignment with what you prefer. By staying in that positive state, it will allow you to extract a benefit from it. So staying in that positive state, remembering that it's all about your response to what is going on that makes the difference, are vitally important at this time for you to remember with regard to the subject at hand of this transmission. Now, let us remind you that when we spoke in Sedona, in that transmission, and we referred to female and male energies, we were talking about energies, not necessarily the idea of specific people. We allowed you to make that interpretation. Even though sometimes those energies can be applied to specific people, our purpose, as we have just said, in making what appeared to be a political observation, a political statement, was for the purpose of taking a reading on the pulse of your population in terms of your response and reaction to what was said. The idea, therefore, is that our Interstellar Alliance Council has now been in deep discussions for quite some time, since that transmission, about the differences that may occur in the upcoming years with regard to contact, not based on any political elections on your planet, but on your responses to the comments that were made. So the idea to understand is, while contact is still going to occur, is still inevitable within the next 5 of your years, we gave you that window of 5 years because there was movability, flexibility within that window. Due to reactions and responses that we received and picked up and observed in the collective energy of your society with respect to the comments that were made in our transmission, we have determined that there is now a high degree of probability that what we first suggested would occur at the end of your 2026 and the beginning of your 2027 may now occur somewhere more around your 2028 or 29. Because we now have to assess exactly, based on what we have picked up from all of you, exactly how and why contact will occur on your planet. It will still happen, but the reasons for it, the style of it, may change somewhat due to our observation and assessment of information that people on your planet are capable or not capable of handling. Remember, as we just said in the initial monologue, we did not give you a political opinion. We gave you a reading of the energy that exists at this moment with regard to the idea of whether or not male and female energy will move forward in a balanced way in your society or an imbalanced way in your society. The most important thing that we can say at this time is this. We will put it in these terms. You have entered the age of what you term the oligarchs. The people that you choose to put into positions within your governments that you elect are not the people that are, in your terms, running things. It almost does not matter who you have elected, for there are many things going on behind the scenes that will come out in certain ways at certain times that will allow you to recognize how your world is really run and allow you the opportunity to work together, to talk to each other, to finally communicate instead of divide, instead of being divisive, instead of sticking to your own opinions, instead of basing them on fears, to finally break down the barriers and allow yourself not to be on one side or the other of the glass wall that creates the splitting prism, but to be the glass wall, to allow communication to flow in both directions, to get at the crux of the issues deep down and to not be afraid to talk to each other, to discuss with each other, to learn from each other, to hear each other, to commune with each other. Remember, you are all on the same planet, even if you are in different realities. We have talked about the idea of multiple variations of Earths, so do not be confused by this phrase. The idea in your minds is that you have one world, and it can be experienced that way even if you are in different realities as individuals. It can be experienced positively as one world if you allow yourselves to begin to truly talk with one another, to communicate with one another on a deeper level, to go around and get past your fears of what the others in your lives may think, may believe. It's about the idea of being willing to open up communication and making that the most important thing in your reality so that you can express your true self-empowerment as you move forward toward open contact. So even while our Interstellar Alliance is having a discussion on our end about how, where, when, and why contact will occur, inevitably, in your realities, all of your realities, the idea is that you must also convene discussions, communications, and have consensus on a very important level, regardless of the differences you may have in your perspectives. It's all right to be different. It's all right to have different points of view. It's all right to be yourselves, but you must make sure that those perspectives and those points of view are not coming from negative or fear-based beliefs. Find within each other the positive aspects of each other's perspectives. Learn, talk, discuss. Do not be afraid. Be open, be kind, be gentle. This is the most important thing. And to that end, as the presentation in Sedona initially of the description of how open contact may occur was the 7th step in the Interstellar Alliance social experiment, this is the 8th step. The learning to talk, the learning to communicate, the learning to dig down and to not be afraid, to share, to discuss, to see what is truly in your heart of hearts and how you have more in common than you think. Allowing yourself to come together, to move together, and to move forward in this way will allow open contact to occur in the most positive and constructive and beneficial way possible. Because it is, at this point, no matter what, it is inevitable. For there are many reasons for it to be so. Now, we will say one more thing before you begin your questions. The 8th step also includes a brief communication at the end of all of your questions today. Not before, but at the end. So you will let us know when your questions are done, when your timing is up. We will introduce briefly an entity from the Interstellar Alliance that we have never introduced before. In our language, this entity is known as Ashaya. It translates roughly into your language as the Oracle. The Oracle will deliver an oracular comment at the end of all your questions today. And part of the 8th step, and pay attention to this, it is vital, is that when this comment, when this oracular transmission is delivered, it will not be explained, it will not be interpreted by us, it will not be clarified beyond what is said by us. This will be left up to you. This will be another test, another observation of how you decide in working together to interpret what the oracle will have said. When this transmission occurs, it will be repeated 3 times. We would strongly encourage you to actually write down what the oracle will say, so that there will be no confusion and no misunderstanding of the actual wording of that transmission. But the interpretation, the clarification, the understanding or misunderstandings will be left up to you to have, and ideally will spur conversations among you, not only with those who may believe and see as you do, but with those who do not. To truly understand that you are in the same boat, all of you. There is something bigger than all of you, something bigger than your political divisions that is about to occur in your reality, that is coming up in the near future, that has to do with the ramifications of what contact actually means on your planet. And like I said in the initial monologue, the fact that we have made a comment you perceive as political will not be done again. We will now focus only on the idea of what you need and what you require and how you will benefit from understanding more clearly the information that we have delivered to you for many years about things like the principles of the formula and how you can create your reality to be more in alignment with your true essential frequency. For there is no more point and no more readings and no more observations that need to be made. The Interstellar Alliance Council has all the information it needs now to make an assessment of exactly how, when, and why contact will occur. And when we talk about the idea of open contact, we mean simply for those portions of your civilization that have not been experiencing what you would call public open contact in its history for quite some time. We have already reminded you that there are many indigenous civilizations and cultures on your planet that have been experiencing contact for generations. So when we talk about the idea of open contact, we mean for the entirety of the cultures on your planet, for no one to be left out and nothing to be left out. So, allow yourselves to rest easy, to take a deep breath, to move forward in peace, in love, in harmony, and again, most importantly, in communication. To talk with one another, to be okay with differences, but to not be insistent or resistant or headstrong about your point of views. Find the deep commonality between why anyone with any perspective desires what they desire. For the real reasons, the true underlying reasons, aside from the political or social or economic expressions of them, or even the religious expressions of them, the true underlying reasons will unite you. It is important for you to be united in approaching open contact. For again, when it occurs, we will be involved in every aspect of your society, every single one. You will interweave with us. We will interweave with you to become one society eventually. That is what joining your galactic family means. So, be prepared, be aware, be awake. So now I remind you the 2 principles: staying in a positive state, and it's how you respond to what happens that makes a difference. In some senses, in addition to what the oracle will say at the end of these questions, will mostly be the answers to any question you have in this transmission of a political nature. So be prepared for extremely brief responses to any question that may concern your politics, because we have already addressed, in whatever way we need to, the idea of anything you may be asking that has to do with your elections and your politics. So pay attention to what we've already said, because those are your answers, and those are the only answers we are going to give from this day forward with regard to that particular topic. So please now, if you will, in return for the gift you are giving us of allowing us to hold your hands together, walking forward toward contact, in return, how may I serve you? Please ask your questions at this time.
Thank you, Bashar. We do have a lot of political questions. Should I try and condense them?
If at all possible, because again, most will have the same answers that we have already given.
Okay. Did you observe our reactions to your political statement in Sedona? What did you observe? Did you accelerate the splitting?
We accelerated the potential of the split to see exactly how far the divisions that exist within your culture would carry you in the split, how far on either side you would go from the glass wall, away from it. And in that observation, this is why we now say it is so important for each of you, in whatever reality you are in, to come back toward the glass wall, to see each other through that glass wall, to reach through that glass wall, to make it permeable, to connect, to discuss, and to talk, because this is, in a sense, your final opportunity before contact to learn to come together, to learn to find out what the true issues underlying all the division and divisiveness are in your society. For it is something that isn't actually that real. It is something that is artificial to a degree. When you truly look at the underlying reasons for why you have the perspectives that you do, again, you will find that you have more in common than you think. It is time to talk. It is time to conference. It is time to convene.
Observing this through glass wall, or does it mean that we are essentially on the other side of this glass wall with this elected person? If so, is there still time to switch sides by following our passion and going more neutral?
We have just answered this question.
When you made your statement in Sedona, I presume you knew that the outcome of the election would be the male winning. Knowing this, your taking responsibility comment makes sense, that we must take responsibility for this path that we've chosen. If we voted for the female, what does it mean to take responsibility here?
What it means is that at this point, as we have said, it doesn't matter who you voted for. Taking responsibility is taking responsibility to your reaction and response to the transmission that we delivered. That's what we mean by taking responsibility. And we are now discussing the idea of the actions necessary to take responsibility for your responses and reactions by coming together and having open discussions, clear discussions, by understanding each other, by listening to each other, by really talking with each other. This is what's important now, and would be a true expression of your willingness to take responsibility for the initial reactions and responses that you had to our comments in our transmission. This is now what we're watching. This is now what we're observing. This is what's important to move forward, no matter who you voted for, no matter what your election is. As we said, This is a play playing out, and what's going on behind the scenes is actually more about what's really going on your planet than it is in terms of the play act that happens to be your elections. For that is a screen.
Are you providing transmissions to parallel realities where the US elected the female in this recent election? Do you personally find certain timelines more exciting than others? Compared to timelines where the female may have won this election, what positive aspects or opportunities do you see within the current timeline, both on a collective and individual basis?
I believe you are beginning to see how the way in which a lot of these questions are framed are now becoming irrelevant based on what we have already said.
Okay. Is World War III coming?
We talked about the idea of the imbalanced energy that is typically referred to as masculinity might lead in that direction. It doesn't mean it will happen. It will lead in that direction. Remember, the idea of what you might refer to as World War III does not necessarily have to be and never will be a nuclear exchange. So the idea is that it may lead by an imbalance of energies that are typically referred to as masculine style energies of aggressiveness, will lead closer and closer to the idea of what you will experience or call World War III. Again, it doesn't mean it will actually happen if you are willing to understand what we are saying to you in this transmission today.
Okay.
We are now speaking on behalf of the Interstellar Alliance Council. And we are giving you the result of the discussions that are ongoing in this council. So we would strongly encourage you to pay attention to the way in which information is being given to you, to listen to the wording, for it is precise. We said things would lead in certain directions, not that it was inevitable. But nevertheless, by allowing yourselves to begin true communication, you can pull yourselves back to the center, to be with one another, and to empower yourselves in a multitude of ways that will allow you to dispel the veil that you think is your political reality, which is nothing but a smokescreen for what is really going on behind the scenes, so that you can truly open your eyes and see your world for what it is and how you can truly decide together to change it in ways that will allow you to join the galactic community in a positive way.
I'm really excited about open contact, but I'm also starting to feel uneasy. I feel like it's almost like being excited about the second coming of Jesus. And I never want to be the one to be tied to dogma or feel like I am a follower, even if I'm a follower of Bashar. I also don't want to be accused of being in some kind of cult. Can you help me with these feelings of uneasiness?
Again, it's all about self-empowerment, taking responsibility for yourself, being responsible to others to be yourself. The idea, as we have expressed many times, of what you call the second coming is the awakening of the Christ consciousness within each and every heart of every person. It is not about dogma. It is about claiming your own spiritual relationship to all that is, to Source. It is about being the unique individual that you are and being of service to others by being who you are.
Our political system is struggling to function as intended by our founding fathers, with corruption in politics and highly qualified candidates unable to compete against dishonest ones. What steps can we take to reform our government and improve its functionality? What principles or strategies should guide us how our country is governed?
We have told you what the next step is.
Would you like to share your impressions on the congressional hearing on UFO UAPs that took place on November 13th?
Any discussion of this is a step toward open contact.
Wonderful. Will the UAP hearings before the U.S. Congress be the vehicle where Pleiadians are introduced to the world as part of disclosure?
Possibly. This has not yet been fully decided.
In the light of the election cycle, we can truly see what diverging train tracks look like from the political left and right, based on your definitions of positive and integration and negative and separation. Would choosing either political side and shunning the other be fundamentally negative? Shouldn't we be integrating both sets of viewpoints in order to remain positive?
As we have just said, yes, it's time to come together. It's time to look at the train tracks in this way. There is a track, meaning one rail. There is another track, one rail. There is a third track in the center. Allow yourself to view all three of these tracks, all three of the rails. Allow yourself to be on the train that may be using these two rails, and you can be on the train that may be using these two rails, but understanding that there is a common rail in the center. Allow yourselves now to come back to the glass wall, as we have just encouraged you to do. Now is the time for this. All of the preparation, all of the buildup, all of the positive, all of the negative. Again, a transmission from the oracle at the end of these questions will highlight this idea in a way that will allow you to fathom in your own way, at your own time, the interpretations and meanings that will allow you to move forward. We will not comment on the interpretation. We will not comment or respond if you ask us, did we get the right interpretation? There is no right interpretation in the ultimate sense. You will each decide for yourselves, and you will each decide together what the interpretation actually means, but it is being delivered because it is time for it to be delivered, and it is something that will create a little bit of mystery in you to allow you and encourage you to explore that mystery together, to understand in fullness and in the fullness of time toward contact what it actually means for you.
Bashar, as a first contact specialist, will you be the one making physical open contact with Earth when it's time for the Sasani to do so? And since you have connections to Earth, how do you feel about this, and what does this mean for you personally?
I will be among the first contact specialists from my civilization, yes. Obviously, this is representative of my passion, or I wouldn't be doing it. So that's what it means for me personally. I am very passionate about interacting with humans on Earth because I understand and I can see, I can observe the incredible potential, the incredible power you have to transform your world into heaven on earth. But it requires that you come together to do so.
We are very excited to meet you.
As are we to meet all of you. But the yous that we will be meeting will not be the yous that you are today. So become the yous that are the yous who will meet the us's.
I've been following your steps of the social experiment for open contact, but I struggle with fear when it comes to gathering groups for CE5. I'm fine practicing alone, but fear of being labeled crazy in my conservative community holds me back from involving others. How can I overcome this fear and take action without missing out?
Do you understand that the leader of the congressional UAP investigation is a conservative? Therefore, both sides are interested in the idea of bringing out information that has to do with disclosure and open contact. Learn what is going on and who the players are, and that may assuage your fears by understanding that you can rely on simple information to describe what is going on, and that many different people from many walks of life and many belief systems are coming together with regard to the idea of disclosure and the discussions of UFOs and UAPs. And this is what we're talking about. It is one of the areas in which all beliefs can come together. The very concept of open contact can be connective and uniting, no matter what your personal, philosophical, or political, or economic, or social beliefs may be. It can drive you to explore what's at the core of all of them in a way that you can begin true, deep communication with one another, looking past the surface representations that are not as important as the deep internal desires on a very simple level for what every human truly needs in life: to feel that they are worthy, that they are loved, that they are heard, that they belong. So let open contact and anything that has to do with it bring you together. Fear not. You are not alone in that endeavor.
If the Pleiadians are going to be the first ones to land, why don't we hear much about them or from them?
There is actually a lot of information about them if you will pay attention to the idea of things like UFO sightings. You will find that most of the sightings, the vast majority at this time, are actually Pleiadian ships. They're getting you used to their presence in a variety of ways. So, even though your news programs may not carry awareness of who these ships belong to, I'm telling you now, most of them are Pleiadian ships.
Are the ships on the videos that were published, are those the Pleiadian ships?
Some of them.
Can you describe what they look like?
There are a variety of types. Some of them, like our ships, are triangular. Some of them are saucer shaped. Some of them are cylindrical. It just depends upon the ship's function.
What technology was given to us by ETs in the past 50 years? And what will be the first 2 or 3 technologies that they will share, or you will share with us when open contact occurs?
As we have said, holographic recordings of your entire history, going back thousands upon thousands of years. Certain kinds of genetic, vibrational medical understandings, what you may term free energy devices, will also be part of some of the technologies that we will aid and assist you with, among other things.